when the Manchester City takeover occurred, there were very early press releases and statements by the club talking about how the new owners wanted to invest in improved training facilities and improved stadium. And at the time, I thought that that was a crazy idea. I thought that they needed 11 new players in order to go and compete and climb up the league. And obviously, they made signings very early on, statement signings like Robinho, and they brought in a couple of other players. And eventually, over the course of quite a few transfer windows, they were able to climb up and compete for the FA Cup, compete for top four, compete for the Premier League, and to win those trophies and to win a treble. And we are where we are today. And I look at a Manchester United today, and I look at the Carrington training facility, and I think how naive I was back then to have underestimated the importance of improving training facilities, because we know that Manchester United, since even before Alex Ferguson retired, that they haven't reinvested money into the training facilities, and so they are where they are. And I want to give an example of, so that you can understand the importance of this. Imagine you go to a doctor, and he's the best doctor in the world, and he sends you off to have a scan on, let's say, a lump that is found. So you go to the hospital, but they only have a CAT scan. They don't have an MRI. And so you have the scan, and you go to the doctor, the best doctor in the world, for him to give you the analysis of the results. And of course, because a CAT scanner is less detailed than an MRI scan, the advice that he's able to give you is limited, because he doesn't have the information that the best equipment could give him. And this is exactly what happens at Carrington. They could hire the best sports scientists, the best nutritionists, the best medical staff, but because they only have the CAT scan and not the MRI, the advice, the progress, the process is limited. And this is a particularly big issue in the modern day game. When Sam Allardyce was at Bolton Wanderers, the manager of Bolton Wanderers, he was very positively praised for his introduction to the game of things like statistical analysis and sports science and nutrition science, etc., etc. And Arsene Wenger was sort of one of the early sort of introducers of nutrition science and sports science. But Sam Allardyce at Bolton was really the guy who was kind of really pushing this stuff forward and really being sort of praised for that. And this has only increased as we've headed further and further into the modern game. And it's particularly important today, sports science, nutritional science, etc., etc., because the game now is much less individualized than it was sort of 15, 20 years ago. And when I talk about individualism in football, I'm thinking about players like JJ Okocha and Ronaldinho and young Cristiano Ronaldo and Paul Gascoigne and Diego Maradona and lots of others. We could go through a long list of individualist players. Zinedine Zidane's another one. And today, those players don't really exist anymore, those individualized players. And the reason for that is because football now is much more of a sort of drone sport, a very collectivized sport. You attack together, you defend together. You all have sort of roles to play on the pitch. And there is no sort of, it's very rare to find a player that sort of plays a free role Jude Bellingham is one today that has that kind of free role. But if you were to go back 15 or 20 years ago, lots of players had a team, had a player in it that would have a free role, go and be effective wherever is necessary on the pitch. And because football is no longer sort of that individualized sport, and that it's become much more collectivized and much more drone style of sport, there's much more emphasis on things like the fitness of the player, how good of a base level athlete the player is. And there's a lot less sort of emphasis on individual technical abilities, right? The requirement of football today is that you have to be able to run for 90 minutes. You have to hit 13k per 90. You have to you have to have pressing yardage and tracking yardage and blah blah blah. These are all athletic statistics. 20 years ago, these statistics didn't really exist. And the quality of a player quite often today is based off of, can he put in a shift? How good of an athlete is this player? Rather than, does he create? What does he create? What is he like technically? Can he pass the ball? Can he carry the ball? Etc., etc. But because Carrington is levels below everything else, and bear in mind that when Sir Alex Ferguson left Manchester United 10 years ago, Manchester United were considered to have some of the best training facilities in the world, and now they're considered to have some of the worst facilities of any sort of top football club. And so what this does then is that it sets back Manchester United on every single level. Coaching, players, youth development. And so what occurs then is that, you might have noticed that Manchester United haven't developed players for a long time, that players coming through their youth system are of a lower quality than sort of, if we would set a benchmark of the 92 kids. There have been no players that came through that system that are of that level. When you consider as well that youth system once had Ravel Morrison, one of the most technically gifted youngsters that the country has ever seen, and Paul Pogba and Gerard Piqué, etc., etc. And today, what we've had coming through that youth system is the best example is Marcus Rashford, who is nowhere near those players. Nowhere near those players that were in that youth system. And it's because they don't have the training facilities to take a young player from a player with great potential to a world-class player. They don't have that capability anymore. With regard to the players that they currently have, there are players who come in from different clubs, and the training facilities are often a step down. And what does that create? It creates a lack of effort. It creates a lack of enthusiasm, because if the standards at this club are lesser with regard to the training facilities, then what's expected of me as a player must be lesser than at other clubs. And therefore, the sort of push to perform is significantly lowered. And then the coaching staff, they arrive, they see the training facilities, they're not as good as other clubs, and what do I have to work with? Not a lot. Manchester United, in order to be a big club again, they need significant investment in the training facilities for the reasons that I've outlined. And if they don't improve those training facilities, other clubs that are considered big clubs, they're going to constantly be improving. And in order for Manchester United to remain at the gap that they're at between those clubs, they need to invest at similar rates. And if they don't, these other teams will continue to run away. If you like this video, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Comment down below, what do you think about Manchester United's training facilities, and how do you think that they're affecting Manchester United's performances as a club? And have a great day.